Just FYI, everybody has their own trip. Whether you're going to do it spoken like Laveena does or writing, depends on what's right for you. You might do painting, you might do art, you might do singing, you might do dancing. It doesn't have to be performance art, but art for art's sake. One of the fundamental truths of how you deal with sadness or melancholy. Yes? With individuality, it comes with a specific chemistry inside of the being relative to how you're going to experience this off and on pulse. Yeah? Happy, sad, sweet, surprise, or satisfaction, however it is that you're going to experience this. Just know that the more you allow the energy to flow, the freer it might feel. However, there are places of stagnation or stuckness. It's built into the genetic frequency, this longing, this yearning to overcome, yeah, to be able to rise tall to whatever occasion that might be feeling like you've got to bend your back. The weight is so heavy, yeah, like Atlas holding Atlas. Quite interesting to see. Biologically, this bones of the body, lower spine, upper neck. So truly bending through the weight of that heavy heart, like a flower whose seeds bow it down towards the ground, like a sunflower, if you've ever grown them. I remember doing that when I was a kid, and just seeing how sad it was when the seeds were, yeah, they're very heavy on sunflowers, those giant ones. When those seeds were just drawing it down, down, down towards the ground. Sad, the flower, sad. And yet, under the weight of this heavy heart, we can get a shock to the heart. Come into the higher self. Take the high road, behavior of the self, love oneself, no matter what, and come to rest in that space of contemplation, part of the new era, the new age. A shock of separation, that's the current era that we move into, 51.6, leading us to the 20.6, which is wisdom, the wisdom of contemplation. So if it's right for you, my homework assignment, if it's not right for you to practice, okay? Because I know I haven't really said what to do if it's not right for you to practice besides observe. Maybe, just maybe, if you're in the mood, we see mood, yeah, stream of moodiness, chemistry, and the next time you are sad, why not try to experience the sadness? As in, don't run from it, don't fight it, don't push, don't struggle, but sink down into it, feel it deeply, if it's right for you to do. And then channel that energy. That's why they're called channels, all of us being a kind of channel to some kind of frequency or energy. Channel whatever energy that melancholy is into some creativity, because all individuality is creative. It resonates to that. And it's not in order to make money from it or do something with it necessarily, not necessarily, but simply to allow the energy to flow. Just like when a bottle or a stopper of a bottle or a dam has dammed the waters and we cannot move forward, the energy being used to express the creative muse, that's one of the things that can help you. We say feel it to heal it, you know, one of those trite, but truly true experiential processes that you can experiment with. I would invite you to do that. The next time you feel sad, the next time you want to cry, I remind you to think back that you don't have to understand why, that you can come to rest in that space of grace within the higher self, that realm, yeah, that deep, 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 deep down, that calm, quiet, perhaps the middle ground. Remember, emotional chemistry, up and down on a wave frequency. This one, spike, up or down. So can you come to that space and channel with grace your higher self? You all have it. I just allowed myself to go to higher self-expression. Your investigation might lead you to something deep and dark, but it's still true and authentic so long as it's yours. So can you allow for the muse to come through you, whether it be coloring, anything, singing? Doesn't have to be that you create anything. Your voice is an instrument. Nonsensical words. Have you ever tried that? Singing by the seashore? As a child, I did. Okay. So chemistry, Ra wants us to understand melancholy, this chemistry, as sadness. Sadness is not a bad thing. We who tended to grow up with the emotional wave frequency in our natal design, and our mothers or fathers, sisters or brothers, doesn't matter, whoever was close to us, was non-emotional and not liking that experience or frequency about us, we might have learned, feeling like there's something wrong with us when we are rejected or abandoned for our emotional dysregulation because we didn't know how to self-regulate quite yet when we're little. And depending on where the parent is at in their growth and maturity process, being able to handle that kind of emotion when maybe they're dysregulated or destabilized too, there is no blame here. It's just understanding where the wounding may have come from. Generally speaking, it's when you're a child and there is something that you feel rejectionable or abandonable or not good enough or fundamentally flawed. And there are so many places in the design where that can happen. So instead of allowing the mind to run amok with reasons as far as whys, remember rationalizations as far as why, instead of believing the thought you think that makes you shrink, I like to call it because sometimes the rhymes help it stick, that sadness, anyone who carries any authenticity in their individual design, as in there's something unique to you, you've got planets within this construct that you see, then it doesn't matter where it is or how much of it you've got, you are carrying the chemistry of melancholy. Now, let me tell you something sweet about this, as in the flip side, so wonderful to exist. When you have individuality in your natal design, it speaks to the nature of an authentic, mystical experience that's yours. An activation where you can be conditioned by the other side, or a whole channel, a uniqueness to the individuation process. Remember, all individuality is fundamentally individual empowerment or self-empowerment, yes? So this chemistry of melancholy, the most important thing I want you to take away from this is to remember, do not make up reasons for the chemistry. You're sad because sadness is. The saying, I am rageful, comes from here, 34. I am angry. I am, says the 20. It can say happy, sad, but anger, here, 22:12, or of course here, 34:20. So is it true, because remember, we're looking for truth here today. Is it true that you individually are anger? You are the fundamental nature of sadness, or happiness? No, we are an instrument or an expression of the frequency vibrating alive inside, the chemistry expressing. The reasons, you don't have to have a reason why. Now, I know this might be a little bit difficult to grasp if you're new to human design. I want you to suspend your disbelief for a bit and just simply observe and watch, as rather than letting your mind get hooked up on the stories, I can't get over this limitation because, okay? So remember the I know voices, okay? I know, and I can or I can't. I can try, I can or I can't. I am, I know, sorry, I am is 20. I know, yeah, to insist or to desist, or to be certain or uncertain, or to try or not. I am myself in action with awareness. Now, we all have it. Remember, you have everything in the body graph. It's just that when you have activations in your natal design, this sets you up for a specific frequency field or way in which you're going to interpret life. That's all. The natal design is how we make decisions. That's it. It's the fundamental truth of what's unpacked over the life cycles. Okay? It is not the truth. We who are instruments of fingers pointing at truth for ourselves, for our clients, we can use the body graph map to analyze, to help the person self-realize. You don't tell them. They intuit. The new era, very much about intuition. They go inner stand, inner knowing, okay? The wisdom to understand the patterns of existence in order to have that turn into right action. It's an inner process, an inner knowing, okay? So as we move through each of these gate activations, I'm going to remind you some basics, and then also I'm going to be using Ra's storytelling, some of his stories, as well as interspersed with mine, to attempt to get you to self-recognize, self-realize, awakening. That's what human design is here for. So the muse here is the focus I'd like to take in the structure of individuality. How might the muse show up? So that way it'll be slightly different from the recording I've done in the past. In this structure of individuality, as far as how it operates within the body graph, we remember that we have integration, a channel, the backbone of what it is to be human as a species, the original core being, pure, manifesting generator, splenic, generated in response to the higher self or the identity expressed in the world, busily, charismatically. Following one's own convictions happens over here, within the centering circuit, to be clear. The initiation into the world, this powerful shock and initiation into the existence of being, behaviorally as well as transcendently. Okay? Empowerment, yet centering within on oneself, the most powerful self-fulfilling generation of identity in the world, tantrically. Okay? A tantric channel. We will explore that. I think it's next week or something like that. Okay. Then we have the knowing circuitry. Okay? Knowing is a sub-circuit of individuality. Centering is a minor circuit, sub-circuit of individuality. So these two are about empowerment, individual empowerment. This is self-empowerment because it's integration. So the power of the energy being for oneself and oneself only. That's why they get so rageful when they're not allowed to have their power expressed in the now through their words or action. This body graph itself, you can see it's dominated by individuality. There is no place in this body graph that it doesn't touch, as in it touches all centers. So each of these circuits have their own form or experience, their structuring of melancholy, okay? And the muse, sometimes it's moody. So it may go on a rampage. It may be quite funny, humorous, absolutely. Clown, fool, idiot. Can be quite foolish. Remember, fool? Leaping out of the tribe into the void can be foolish, foolhardy, or playing the fool. Gate 43, one of the 3 gates of humor. So the melancholic structure, remember, happy, sad, every single process here. These are the quote unquote reasons, again, maybe true, maybe not, but it doesn't have to be justified or rationalized in order to help you wallow in that experience and subject oneself to this never-ending sea of sadness. Because, hey, what goes down too must come up. So when we're dealing with integration, this is a very primitive area of the body graph, a primitive and primary system within us where we have integration being about our response to survive as ourselves in the now, in the moment, the never-ending moment. As the seas of the sands of time shift, we still find that all we can have access to truly in this body, in this moment, through this chemistry, is here and now. Integration is rooted in the basic fear of tomorrow. Remember that all fear is the root for the seed of wisdom, the seed of intelligence. This is physical body intelligence. Melancholy about not only now, but tomorrow, particularly in the integration channel. The sadness, according to Ra, is always about tomorrow. This leading us to the depression of hopelessness, profound meaninglessness. Why? Because all individuality is about why, the great big why in the sky, meaningfulness or meaninglessness. And where do we find meaning? Higher path, purpose, taking the risk, okay? The fear of death. Remember that 28 can deeply affect the 57 when it's in somebody's chemistry. So, what is the reason for being? Being, says integration. Survival is such an ordeal. What if one doesn't have integration relative to natal imprinting? Then you're completely open to amplifying this. How nice. Beware that you are beyond compare, that you are so, Ross said something like, that's the most dangerous thing you can do to allow somebody into your aura. And he's not being melodramatic there, truly. It really is part of the process of being aware and being aligned to right action so that you have the right people in your life, the right sweet sadness to sink your teeth into. The 57, the gentle, the gate of intuitive clarity is where we begin in integration because, again, it's the root for the seed of wisdom, the fear, this extraordinary power of clarity, intuitive, here and now, the right ear, melancholy, sadness about what you hear. So as it's the heart of integration, the thing that is so important to understand about the fear of tomorrow, it's based on what you hear here, now, in this body, in this vehicle, this form. That feeling about what you hear can lead you to sadness because it's attuned to the right ear, truth, hearing truth in the now or not. If you're dealing with the not self, and I remember Ra, stopping his readings because he just couldn't take it anymore, relatively speaking. It was enough, enough is enough. But also, too, the not self is such a sad thing, such a sad, pitiful creature, as in when someone is locked into the misidentification with the distortions of what is not true relative to the authenticity within you. The not self fears everything and bases all of its decision around fear, particularly now, first line and the background frequency field. So this deep, dark, when it gets stuck, remember, there is a potential for things to get stuck. Depression relatively to what people say, and particularly because all individuality is inherently romantic in nature. Yeah, the passion, romance, off, on. Does he love me? Does he love me not? What your lover might say. Ooh, echoing in the halls of your heart when that pain is expressed from dissonance. Yeah, say you had an argument, a blow up. Oh, quite sad to see. So in a sense then, this is something that comes from the outside I heard my lover lying to me, or I don't know what they're lying about, but I know they're lying. Or I'm sad because. Again, remember the deep acoustic nature of the 57. Oh, might it lead us to some despair about the lover or the experience of hearing truth. I imagine those of you who have this might recognize it, yes? Just going to check. That's you. No integrations, activations. Yeah, me too. So what does it mean when you don't have this in your design? You amplify and potentially distort. As a projector, the person in front of you is the primary focus. As a reflector, transits. Manifestors are also very much connected to transits. Generators, open and enveloping, porous, no filter, no shelter, no protection. The generator is only protected by its sacral response. Okay? Projector, protected by not just strategy and authority, but also the motivational frequency. That's the, like, for us who are projected, it is our sacral response equivalent. Okay? The nature of survival is generative. We have to generate life in order to survive. Those of us who are non-sacral, we are not generative types. We still have to create energy somehow, some way. It's not like our sacral is completely dead. It is there still, able to learn wisdom about life. So when you're looking at any place that you're open, in this case for me and Sean, totally open, you're looking at the ability to see clearly others' generative forces. So can we write stories through our moods, through our recognition capacity of what keeps us alive and generated or not? What if you're degenerating? Why would you degenerate here? Let's imagine a tiny little child, okay? Tiny little child born to parents who either abandoned them physically, unfortunately, so they're an orphan. Maybe mentally, they're checked out, they're a drunkard, or they're workaholic. So physically, mentally, spiritually, there's no love there, no care, nothing that is nurtured in the little tiny baby being. So disempowered, maybe they weren't asked and they were stripped of their dignity as a child because they were violated in some way. Can you imagine the rage inside when one's personal process has been violated? Yeah, rage. Absolutely. That's where it comes from. Boundary invasion. What keeps us alive is that life is generated inside of us. We don't create it, you know? It's not like growing flowers here. It's a generated response to life to stay alive. So those of us who don't have a consistency here, yeah, no aspects of that chemistry, chemically, can still amplify. It can still come through transits, through people, through life, through existence. It can. It's just not unique to us. It doesn't mean it's bad or wrong for us. Do recall when we say not self, it simply means not consistent, reliable, trustworthy, or unique to you. That's it. Okay? You have everything. The structure of this body graph never changes. Well, except in the mutation, but that's to come. You who are born here now, right now, the structure of the body graph is not changing. When we look at the next gate, 34, power of the great, the gate of power. Power is only great when its display or use serves the common good. So the melancholy, sadness, potential rage inside is about not being able to use one's power. So the frustration and potential rage, violence, it's a powerfully responsive depression. Remember, need for deep rest. Because it's highly energized, they will need a break from that depression. Remember, this is off-on principle. It is the most powerful gate out of the sacral, the gate of power. And so there's a real sadness here about not being able to use your energy to do something about anything, whatever that energy happens to be longing for to express in the now. By the way, when these people become depressed, again, violence being a result. So when they're depressed and they're not able to use their energy, let's imagine that little tiny baby child I was mentioning earlier, instead of integration, mental projector, abandoned by father at birth, mother could not take care of him, not really, truly, and so was often out and gone, leaving him alone to fend for himself, whether that be at home or out camping on the ice, abandoned, lonely, cold, rageful, became distrustful of not only women, but himself, not being able to use his power in the now. So what happens is they're going to try and resolve that energy. Either two things, they're going to, in response, that rage can go out or that rage can turn around and be pointed in. Either way, damage, outbursts of violence to oneself or to others, trying to release that powerful energy. So what sadness, melancholy, besides not being able to use one's power, what beautiful music can come out of that? And I know that sounds a bit callous, but truly the deepest pain points in our lives can lead to some of the most beautiful, tear-jerking, heart-wrenching music or art or poetry or song or dance. Have you ever watched somebody dance and it moved you inside? Not just the music, but what the expression of their full body singing to you physically might do. So many incredible and interesting things about the human design system is that we can see everything and no one is at fault. There is no need to blame. There is a place for everything and everything in its place. Speaking of place, behavior, higher self, part of place, gate 10, treading, the gate of the behavior of the self. We see the underlying code of behavior which ensures successful interaction despite circumstances. So what generally tends to happen is the people with the hanging 10 will have sadness about other people's behavior, melancholy. No one knows how to behave. Yeah, that person over there with their inability to use their power, growing up and turning into a bully because they have been bullied when they were a child, bullying violently outside or bullying themselves internally inside. Sad to see. And yet, this is part of that person's chemistry. This is the way in which they're designed to experience their fundamental nature of their reality, like behavior here with the melancholy about other people not knowing how to behave. Remember, this is personal and transcendent. When only the 10th gate is activated, it's actually never personal melancholy. It's about others. Okay, so I'm going to break this down to you and show you why. Why is it not about my behavior? Because normally in a gate activation, right, we might have blame about self. Laveena pointing at her 21 as an example. Yeah. Blaming about self. I don't have enough. I am not the best, identifying with not self. Okay. However, that's a part of a channel construct where there is only two harmonic on either side. What's different about what's over here? Whole channel, right? So we have blame as a potential, other people. According to Ra, that 10, other people don't know how to behave. Why? You have a hanging 10, you're 10, you have your own behavior. So this is the gate that is about the ability to be able to behave correctly in life and being correctly in life in being able to not just survive individually, but also in relational context to large businesses, Okay, like how do we behave inside of the company? 10 plays dual duty. Okay, 10 plays dual duty. How do we behave? Those 10s know how in order to survive either in the wilderness or in the company. So 10th gate is going to be sad that about the fact that no one else knows how to behave. Why am I the only one that knows how to behave? So you hear the blame there. Because why? Channel on the other side. Okay. Now 20, the contemplation of the direction of the now, direction of the now. So if we were to add 10 plus 20, we would have a channel. Again, remember, I'm isolating down into just the gate. If it's only the gate, no one else knows how to behave. No one else knows how to behave, right? Here, with the 20, the direction of the now, it's about the expression of now or what is here now. That's the sadness. Because 20 is contemplation, it brings recognition and awareness in now, this now, here now, which transforms understanding, inner standing, into right action. I hear it from my husband's lips as intention. And then I think about the tension, cross of tension, and where it, two arms of it, right across, come from, that tension, inner. And I think of 1.4 and the tension of inner light, in tension, inner, knowing, standing, comprehending. We're talking specifically about hanging gates. So remember, with the sadness in the here now, it's a very uncomfortable felt sense. Yeah, before we had emotional frequency, we had the I feel happy, sad over here. I am happy, sad over here. So 20s by themselves hanging, it is uncomfortable. They can be very uncomfortable with the world here now. They're either fascinated about the future or what's to come. So the melancholy can be about, it'll never be as good as it has been in the past. They may be deeply nostalgic about the bygone eras, days gone by. So they may want to find a place where life isn't so sad. Life was better back then. Could be, should be, might be, would be, instead of being here now, present and available to be here now. When the 20 is connected to the 57, that's when they actually have the capacity to deal with now, because the acoustic hearing, the resonance, the vibrational frequency, attunement to hear now, that's brainwave business. But when you isolate the 20th gate by itself hanging, mind you, please remember, by itself hanging, what you're looking at is one of the most potentially depressive gates. Why? Because it's a spokesperson for depression. So everybody's going to hear about it. Depressive in the sense all throat gates articulate. So the 20 is going to express its sadness. And what happens when you concretize the sadness out into the world? Two things. It either makes it go deeper, or you might be able to make light of it. Spontaneous, maybe, see the silliness of it or not. This very, very powerful melancholy is about articulating a rejection of what is here now, rather than the acceptance and the embracing of what is here now. So hear that. If we were to deconstruct it a bit, something I was speaking to the truth of in the beginning. When you are resisting what is happening here and now, that is when, obviously, resistance comes up rather than acceptance. Remember, gate 60, the first step in transcending any limitation is acceptance. Gate 60, line 1. So many people with the 20th gate just hanging there are uncomfortable, so sad about the nature of their life in the now and the world, as far as what they are experiencing in their world. Did you know everybody has their own world? Well, obviously, it's right there in our body graph, silly. No, but truly, our frequencies, our chemistries, we don't even touch, when we come together and are repelled apart. We don't really even physically touch. It's quite interesting that happens. Okay, centering. When we talked about integration, it was more to do with the nature of the world as far as sadness. So these are beings that on the outside, particularly, that they would be sad about. Whereas here in centering, it's going inside. See, outside, if we think about our five-centered beings way back in the day, before 90,000 years ago, very different when we're five-centered. So what we're looking at now is centering within on one's self, the higher self, centering. See the vortex of energy as it is created between sacral and heart. The only way that we have this connection, an indirect connection through the higher self, through the place in space that we happen to be. So centering circuit is a melancholy about oneself. In other words, it's not about the other. It is centered within on oneself. Remember that the 10th gate is the most self-absorbed, self-involved, and that it does play dual duty. That the 10th gate has a transcendent aspect to it and a personal aspect to it. So with centering circuit, you're seeing the personal aspect, okay, relative to what the melancholy was in integration. It's not about the world being a terrible place, a dangerous place, a sad place. This one with centering, we're looking at melancholy about self, about self. The sadness is in relationship to oneself. Of course, in the larger context of the greater whole. Who am I for myself in this world, in this life, this one precious life that each body has to live? So gate 51 is the arousing, the gate of shock. This is the ability to respond to disorder and shock through recognition and adaptation. Note the keynotes. Ra didn't waste words. Note the keynotes. What do we normally use the word respond for? Sacral response. So it speaks to the nature of this circuitry, the centering. And what is it about? I'm sad because there's a lack of excitement. Yeah, there's no great mountain to climb or, valley to cross. There's no excitement. There's no spark, because not having an exciting life might be, for some people, something to cry about, as in, I'm sad. There's an enormous melancholy here because, look, remember when we're looking at the gate in isolation, we're talking about nothing happening on the other side. When you see the picture, that's the aspect of what I'm speaking to. Okay, so you got a 51 hanging, no 25. Doesn't matter whether your heart center is defined or not. Obviously, it would be defined through one of these other channels, yes? So the enormous melancholy is that they're living a boring life because the gate 51 is about foolishness or courage, bravery or not. It says, I'll do anything for a little bit of excitement, just so that I don't have to live that boring, mundane, humdrum reality. Drab, wake up to the same thing every day, no spark in the life. We know that that's the spark, yeah? So, because life isn't exciting, it can end up jumping into something where maybe it can't be caught by the arms of God, the higher self, truly. As in something that it maybe cannot handle tribally. Nope, it's a shock. We leapt into the void and there was nothing there. Oops, what to do? We learn to adapt. Third line business. Okay, so if this being with a hanging 51 can't actually even deal with the excitement, when the excitement is actually there, even more of this melancholy about shock. See, if it's the arousing and gate of shock, it can also be the flip side. No shock. Oh, how sad. Lack of excitement there. And that's the shock, potentially, when we cannot handle the sharp excitement. So something happens, we can't handle it. Oh, guess what? the gall or the heart being damaged because the shock, all kinds of heart conditions or heart attacks rooted in a hanging 51st gate. Even though this is about technically gall, it can also lead to shock of the heart shocks, yeah, because that's biologically, they're so closely related, they're all in one center. Now, if we look to the 25 on the other side, innocence, the gate of the spirit of the self, we see the perfected or perfection of action through uncontrived and spontaneous nature. Remember, it's always an or not, or not. So what happens is melancholy over insignificance. Imagine the vastness of space. Quite impossible, truly, for us to really identify with. The closest I've ever come was one moment when I was quite small, maybe 10 or something, and just imagining the void of non-existence scared me to freaking death. And then the other closeness was seeing, you know how they say Lanakea is the name of the vast collection of galaxies that they have mapped, Laniakea or something like that. Okay, and then zooming down to see how small we are. Melancholy over insignificance, the insignificance of the infinitesimally small little piece of dust we are on this little glowing blue ball, you know, compared to the huge, huge vastness of unexplored space. We don't even know where it ends. So according to Ra, this is a very unusual form of melancholy that goes very, very deep within us. And it's often impossible to resolve. Wow. Now that's something. Trying to resolve these things that are unresolvable, just like the wisdom of knowing the mysteries is knowing the truth that some things are unknowable. It is what it is. So we don't have to resolve it. Impossible to resolve. The nature of the 25th gate is representing the concept of universal love. Another way we could say that is unconditional love. Down here, love has conditions. You better love, honor, and obey. Up here, no conditions. It's innocence. Everyone is deserving of love. Everything, every creature, every form, even inanimate objects have this gate. They are deserving of love because they exist. That's it. And the melancholy is that we are so small, so insignificant, so seemingly unimportant. And that can turn into, remember, anything that gets stagnant or stuck, when it gets stuck, depression. Okay. So the way that I've been feeling, seeing this, experiencing it, depression. If you've never heard me, I know one of you in here may not have ever heard me say this yet. Depression. If we were to imagine the land, and then there's a dip in the land, and then the land goes on. Okay, and we've got some water rushing in. Sidetracking of the river, brought some water over here. There it is. Thank you, Beatrice. We've got some water, and it comes to rest in that pool. If the water doesn't move, it becomes stagnant, stuck. It becomes fetid. What is there's all these words that happen when there's no movement of energy. Things grow, leaves fall, decays and dies. There's no more flow. Okay, so when we're in this looping thought process or stagnation or stuckness or whatever it happens to be, where we need a break from that stagnation, coming to rest completely, truly, and utterly. That's why I say sink into the sweet sadness. Give it a try and see. Rather than resisting against that pressure, that pulse, that ache of loneliness or longing, why not allow it to flow? Okay, coming to rest, and then let it pulse. Let it emote. Let it go. Any place we have openness, it's time to let something go. We let something go. Maybe it's the melancholy of insignificance. You might, remember, everyone has everything. You got the other side of the channel. You might really identify with the gate that you do not have, you don't have. So can we write songs and poetry? Remember, this is part of the vessel of love. This is the cup the handle of the vessel of love, where love pours out into the world or not. Self-hatred. Recognize right away when you're dealing with a vessel of love person, don't get carried away. It's somebody that's either going to consistently or inconsistently be melancholic. That's also part of the left angle cross of healing, not just the right angle cross of the vessel of love. So inconsistently relative to their melancholy, because inconsistent, melancholy isn't always there. It's often on, there and gone. Not as simple as that, yeah? Long spaces and then spike up or down, pulses. So how unimportant we may seem in this perceivably, finite reality where we cannot see the vastness beyond the sky, the space that is inside. It's inside. Melancholy about oneself, the resolution of these things first and foremost always is following your decision-making strategy. So whatever it happens to be in this context, your response, step by step. This is not a manifesting generator. This is pure sacral generated, connected to the higher self with the ego, willpower, empowered as myself, here now, powerful in the here and now. So living out what is correct for you leads you to the satisfaction of job well done. You are who you are for yourself, your action, driving your behavior in order to find one's place or role within the higher context of what one will or will not respond to, engage with. So how important all these things are relative to how we're here to operate. When we come to this melancholy about oneself, some sadness. Why do you love me when I don't love me? The 10 might say. The creativity that is possible out of these various individual gates is extraordinary. It's ordinary, and yet it's extraordinary because it can come and go, pulsing off and on. When we're dealing with any individuality, we're always talking about mutation, individuality. Okay, individuality is about mutation. Now, this is within the construct overlaid on top of integration. Okay, so it's not integrative, it's this brainwave integrating with exploration that creates integration. So when we're talking about integration, that was the world. Here, we're talking about personal. Okay, following one's own convictions, channel of exploration, following one's own convictions, no matter what. Melancholy is about not being able to live out your convictions. Why? Yeah, respond. Maybe you're trapped in a relational dynamic where you have to be something you're not because they're tribal, you're not. And you've got kids, and now you're being conditioned to care for the byproduct of those kids when all you want to do is go run naked in the sun or whatever the case may be. So in integration, we know that that was pointed on the outside. Here, the 34, the frustration of not being able to use your energy for yourself. Sad. I can't live out my convictions of who I am for myself because the 10, when it's not connected to the 34, is about outside. Those people don't know how to behave. Yet, when it's pointed inside, because it's locked in, this is a channel after all, we're looking at its response. So if the 34 connected to the 10 is showing up in somebody's design, it's not about behavior out there, it's an inner focus. It's who am I for myself, my power expressed through my behavior. So what comes out is sadness when they can't be living out their convictions. Potentially sad, melancholy, depressed, when they can't follow what is right behavior for them. They can seem to be very powerful creatures, and yet the sadness is about the behavior not being able to get other people on board with their behavior. Let's imagine again the tiny little child. And this child has the channel of exploration, a design of following one's own convictions. They're 4. And that parent lording it over, dominating them, whatever the case may be. More power because they're bigger, stronger, think they know more than you. You say, and they say, get your ass over here, do this now, or whatever the case may be. So whether that, Rob would say, people in white hats doing black magic, something like that, when you don't know what the child is here for, and you try to project or expect certain things from the child and force them or push them away from what is authentic to their nature. You know, maybe, yeah, if they're saying, and they really want to run across the street, obviously you're going to keep them from running across the street. But little tiny things, just trying to bend their will to yours, you're going to win every time if you've got a defined ego center. But at what cost? This child's self-esteem and self-worth if you're painful in punishing them and conditioning them away from their response, trying to deal with the world around them by following their response. But then you tell them what to do, and automatically their authority, it's taken from them. So again, remember, the reason why I go into little stories, especially as children, is because Ra wants us to imagine that when we look at this body graph, imagine what happened to them as a child. And you can see so much of what happens in the life process. The way that they act according to their response is going to be quite different than the way that they behave accordingly to what other people demand of this being. So they can move very quickly from sadness about not being able to live out their convictions to depression. Because, why? Maybe, and I'm just to identify and isolate. There can be all kinds of factors here, but I'm imagining when I see these channels, no other definition. Okay, just isolating what might or could be an experience of the expression of the melancholy, that sadness. It is part, not just centering, but it's also part of tantric circuitry that we will explore next week. So lastly, we're going to the knowing circuit, and this is the largest circuit of individuality, right? We have small subcircuit, very powerful. Don't negate this one. It's very huge, big deal. When it goes to the knowing, though, we just have more plentiful channels. We have a lot more going on. So the circuit complexity is more involved because we're dealing with all of the centers except for the heart. So the heart is not about knowing. The heart is about proving, and individuality in the knowing is not. Okay? Maybe not knowing what to prove on the not self-purpose, but knowing you have nothing to prove in the wisdom potential, you see. So when you're dealing with the circuit of individuality, the sub-circuit of knowing, you're looking at the relationship. Remember, to integration, world outside. This is inside. This is also, too, one of the main fundamental core of the foundation of what it is to be part of knowing. Life's a bitch and then you die. Sorry, just kidding. Rob would call bastard and bitch this connective field over here. But the bitchiness I'm talking about is life is hard. Okay, as an individual, it's hard to stand out and be yourself. It's difficult. It's a struggle to overcome all these limitations, and on it goes, you know. Life is difficult for the knowing circuit. Why? Because you have to go inside. And to the world that is so noisy, okay, and so loud and so visually stimulating, closing your eyes and going within. I did that earlier. I'm getting better at not feeling like I'm a freaking freak when I do that, you know? Individuality, as in the judgment of the mind's process of what you look like is weird. This is going inside, hearing the inner truth. Got to be quiet to hear that truth. Okay. Knowing, when you have aspects of knowing, the sadness here, particularly any of these channels, the sadness, the melancholy, life is so difficult. Difficult. Why? Because it is. Why? Why do you need a reason? It is. If it weren't difficult, We wouldn't have any need to rise to the occasion. We wouldn't have a need to develop a backbone. See the backbone? Centering within on oneself. I like to see knowing as a kind of skeleton too, because the knowing of finding what is right for us to stand up and fight for or to move beyond, it develops character, they might say, relative to what the general homogenized view on difficulty, life's difficulties or life's challenges. Everyone has them. Everyone has them. Everyone has difficulty. No comparison, okay? You were built perfectly for the life that you were designed to live. You were not built to handle the shit that you try to do that's out of integrity with you. Do recall, this is why we experiment with being our own authorities rather than taking on what other people expect or think we should do. We go inside. We begin with melancholy about not knowing what to fight for. Opposition, gate 38, the gate of the fighter, which is the ability to preserve individual integrity through opposition to detrimental forces. So we see individuality operating out of the drive to be an individual, to be able to fight. We're dealing with pressure. We're dealing with physical stress. So it creates, relatively speaking, the root, more depression than any other center and physical manifestation of stress, pressure. Remember, it's about the adrenaline system. So we have a mutative, all individuality is, melancholy that is under pressure, and the real melancholy is not knowing what purpose or person to fight for. Okay, it can show up like person or purpose. These are our people who are designed to be fighters. I remember the first time I ever met somebody with a 38.2 and how polite they were. Oh, no surprise. The gate 38.2 is polite. They're polite fighters. So they're designed to be under pressure in order to confront the challenges of life. Yeah, pressure makes diamonds, doesn't it? So if it's just hanging there and they don't have the 28 on the other side, they don't know what purpose brings meaning or passionate fight to rise to the occasion, to stand up and fight. So it's a struggle to find the meaning, the higher meaning of life. And the mind can go into the fear of dying before one achieves one's knowing of what life's purpose is here for, you see. So what endeavor, what is that thing that they're here to test their mettle against, METTLE, or what's here for them to work through, to stand together and fight for a cause or a purpose, whatever difficulty that finally gives them that sense of meaning. Think meaning when you see that 28. So the 38 is a very, very sad gate if we were to anthropomorphize each piece as a gate, as a gate itself instead of attached to a person. It's a sad gate. They all are. But relative to not being able to see that there is a purpose to the difficulties of life. It's supposed to be there, that difficulty. It gives us the drive, the tenacity to fight for a life worth living beyond just survival, to find life's higher meaning, higher calling. Such a beautiful gift, those 38s. Okay. And on the other side, preponderance of the great, the gate of the game player, the risk taker. This is the transitoriness of power and influence, off and on, there and gone. So melancholy is about seeking purpose with a 28. And somebody else has got to help you, and that person doesn't. Can't they see that they need to help me? Now, what is it looking for? It's going to look for the 38 because that gives it its power. This is just potential awareness. Or it can also look up here and find potentially allies within the context of the 57s that can come to its aid to help us know what makes life meaningful, purposeful. Remember, it's a love gate, 28, the love of purpose. Without you, life has no meaning. Without you, I don't have a purpose. Those kinds of things it might say. So I think Romeo and Juliet, without you, I will kill myself. I will die. 28.6 going out in a blaze of glory, or in this case, a knife to the heart or whatever it is that she killed herself with. So the fear is death in the sense, poison and then knife, right? Sense that life is something that's terminal. And what is the value? Why are we here? What is our purpose? What does it all mean? What does it all mean? Do we have to have a purpose? Some of us are here to fight, 38, for a life of purpose, 28. And it's so difficult for a 28th gate with its level of melancholy and depression is that it has a sense of purposelessness and it doesn't know how to get to where its purpose is. Where is it? I can't find it. Yeah, I don't know where it is. I remember all of it has knowing or not. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Help! Why is it that when people ask for help, certain ones of us rise to the occasion and give, and certain others turn the other cheek, turn away, or feel stingy with giving? The chemistry, the individual nature of being. Something to do with standing in one's own truth. If you ask for help from an inauthentic place, like say from a greedy space, rather than asking for help out of a true authentic requirement, you get a very different result. So the 28th gate is remarkably social in a terribly antisocial way. They are enormously dependent on the other individual to help them find their purpose, okay? That's people that I'm here for, people who are looking for purpose. Hi, this is the path I'm walking. Here I am, relative to how I'm here to be of value to you, finding your purpose. And the sadness comes from the fact that somebody else has got to help you with it. And that person either does or doesn't. Oops, sad but true. The unexpected blindsides us sometimes, part of the cross of unexpected here. The melancholy is, they don't know either. They're supposed to help me, but they don't know. We're all lost. Life is useless. I might be. Okay, remember I'm speaking from reasons which aren't necessarily authentically true. But what's alive inside of you, if you believe the mind story, is life is useless. I'm purposeless. Life is purposeless. I'm just going to X myself. I'm just going to kill myself. I'm going to step out. Okay? As in, there's no reason for continuing on in this painful charade of a life. And that's the risk. Life has a risk. It's a risk to love. Remember, it's a love gate. It's a risk to be your own boss or do your own thing or go your own way or be individual or being seen as different or freaky. And so what happens with these beings is that the melancholy builds up. Remember, it's adrenalized from the root and it's physical, as in the potential awareness. It's going to be a physical push or call or drive. And so what happens is, in order to feel like life has a meaning, these are our people who get addicted to the adrenaline rush, the adventurism maybe. And so they'll take wild risks, risky sex, jumping off of cliffs, skydiving, hang gliding, something, deep diving, whatever it happens to be, that will show them the feeling inside of feeling like life has a purpose. I'm alive. Oh, I feel it now, What is the purpose? Being alive here now. And so the 28th, remember, we are dependent on aligning with the right forces. We actually require that here. It doesn't have to be codependent so long as there is this equality in the give and take, the aligned interaction with the other. Okay, getting something out of the empowerment trip, yeah? So you're not going to align with the right forces if you don't enter into things correctly. So again, you ask for help from frustration, anger, bitterness, disappointment. Not going to be a very satisfying end result, or peaceful, or surprising, or successful. Begin with the end in mind. The end does not justify the means. We begin from that place of stillness and joy, or calm and equanimity, or from that place and space that is aligned with the higher truth, the higher principles, the higher calling, the higher knowing. Higher knowing, gate 2. Okay. So we're going up through intuition, the stream of intuition. We reveal we are back here somewhat where we began, because we began with the 57th gate, the gentle, the gate of intuitive clarity. This is the extraordinary power of clarity. And again, the melancholy of what you hear. When we were talking and looking at integration, we remember that it was about acoustic hearing, and that's the right ear, hearing what it hears outside in the world that can make it melancholic. So remember that there's a change that happens when the 28th gate is present in anybody's design relative to this 57, when they have that whole integration, or just the 57, or one of these channels, okay? 57 gets, you could say, tugged on or pulled on, affected by 57 will turn its head towards that 28. Oh, there's somebody else there. So 28s pull it out of its own trip, or when it's in the being, it makes this aspect of the body graph not just about self-empowerment, but just empowerment. It makes integration mutative, as in it's able to mutate others. So the moment that 28th gate is present, now you have a changing in terms of the frequency or the chemistry of a being. Instead of only integration, me, myself, and I, it's, oh, there is an other there. Why? The 28th gate, part of the knowing circuitry. The 28th gate, love of purpose. The 28th gate, such a longing, a magical chemistry. Instead of just hearing what can make you melancholic, you're hearing what's making somebody else melancholic. So being able, this is a nice example. My husband is a 5720, right? So he's individuality. And I've got a 28. So his self-care or self-concern being pulled to, oh, this woman in my life, I care about her too. So what's making her sad? Hearing what's making me sad. So his ear opening up to my melancholy because of the interaction. And that's the most important thing, is that it opens up actual hearing. Remember, left ear hearing truth over time, right ear hearing truth in the now. So actual hearing, the ears. At 57, without the 28 or the 38, 38 will help do this too, as far as the whole channel. The 57, without these beings or without that in their design, can be incredibly deaf to other people. Remember, deaf. All individuality has an inherent layer of deafness. So you're like, wow, it's hearing truth in the now, or not deaf, you see, or you know what I mean? You hear? Okay. Really great question, Sean. He was asking, is it the 28 or does the 38? Does the 38 do that, as in what we were talking about before break, to the 57 as well, or just the 28? To my knowledge, I remember reading off of my BG5 slides that it was 28 or 38 or both that would do that to the 57. Now, where Ra said that, I do not remember. But if we think about what it is to be individual, the root of the individual knowing of intuition, yeah, the stream of intuition is there at the 38. So it just happens to be that the 38 is deaf and it doesn't care about the other person's survival. It cares about its own survival. So my rationalization, my sense of it is that the 38 is going to be, you know, it's the drive to be stubborn. It's the drive to struggle. It's the drive to fight for its own purpose. So if it's open over here, that drive to want to ask and get the 57 to turn and, hey, look at me over here, it may not be as pleasurable, I might say, than a 28 pulling at a 57. But, you know, a fighter is going to fight. So How are they going to fight for meaning? They may not know what meaning to fight for, but they know that they've just got to fight. So I imagine that that has something to do with why both of them, or the whole channel, can get the 57 to turn its head and pay attention rather than being caught up at its own trip where the energy is going, you see. Okay, you have a similar memory as well and an experience as a 5710 with a 2838 daughter. Excellent. Thank you, Halima, for sharing. Isn't this fun? I love it, you guys. Thanks for that. Okay, because there's a lot more and we've been going for quite a while, I need to continue. Let's see. The next thing, 20. Okay, contemplation, the gate of direction of the now. This recognition and awareness in the now, which transforms understanding into right action. Doesn't that sound nice as far as what the future holds for us? Understanding into right action. Ah, wisdom. Or not. Oh, wisdom. Yay. Yeah. The natural tendency of human species creatures. I want that side. I don't want the other side of the coin. Oh, well. Melancholy about the now. Here we have it. The 20th gate doesn't change relative to its context, whether it's individual or integration. It's always about the sadness of what is here now. So if you were living correctly, now isn't going to be a place that's imbibed with all of this melancholy potential, accordingly to Ra. If you were living correctly, you wouldn't have that sadness, longing, yearning to be anywhere but now. Okay, now, be here now, Ram Dass. Okay, so the 39 on the other side, we see obstruction. This is the gate of provocation, the great tease. Yeah, the value of obstruction in provoking analysis, assessment, and reevaluation. So we're on the mirror side to not only the splenic pointing 38, mirror in the body graph, but also remember these are two arms, yeah, or one arm of, I guess, two arms of the cross. Here, this obstruction has to do with being under pressure to make a decision. So tension can bring that, individuation can bring that as far as crosses are concerned. So this is the emotional side. So now we're dealing with the tease, not the flirt, that's 19, the tease, the art of the tease, says the 39. So we're dealing with the chemistry of melancholy and the way that it's going to impact the emotional wave. That individual spike wave is being flattened out, flatter and flatter and flatter until at some point, mutation, no spikes. Okay, so that's what's to come. Ross says that obviously there can be a difficulty in discerning the difference in that sense between what is individual moodiness and what is in fact just the low end of the wave. Again, we've got the root system, and this is the pressure to provoke, to tease. So the dilemma here is that all of these processes filter through individuality, which means it's an off-on principle, it's a chemistry. In this context, it's provoking a certain wave form in the other, and that's the uncertainty in decision-making that makes it so dang painful or sad, melancholy. I'm sad because I gotta be able to make a decision and I'm under pressure. And why can't I, quote unquote, make up my mind? Says this is all purpose fulfilled through mind, right? So we say, oh, I've got to make up my mind. Interesting. Like you make the bed. Is that how it works? Truly fascinating. Sorry, I don't know where that came from. In other words, one of the things that makes the 39 very, very sad is that they don't know what. They're never really sure about timing. Timing is everything for an individual, hey? So under pressure, potentially, especially either their own mind or others, what's the dang difference? Your mind is a spokesperson for all your openness, which you take on from the other in amplification and distortion, either through person or transit. So what's the dang difference? How can you make up your mind when it's not even yours? Not even your bed? Would you walk into a stranger's house and make up their bed? The mind's not yours. It's gas of the brain. Anyway, the decision, being able to make a decision now, it's under pressure. hurry up, make the damn decision. What if you're emotional? Whatever other channel you might have to happen to have. Oof. The mind gets caught in that problem or process. The process is not a problem. The mind gets caught up in identifying with the uncertainty principle. Okay. 55 is part of the cross of uncertainty. I know what that's like. So most people don't understand this provocation, in the way in which they provoke others is that they can't make the decision. I can't make a decision right now. And that provokes people. So when they're under pressure and somebody says, you've got to make a decision, the reason why they're sad is because I'm under pressure to make a decision and I can't. Being asked by life, by the gods, by circumstances, by other people, by whatever it is that's happening. That's the beginning of this melancholy. I'm under pressure to make a decision, but I can't make a decision. And that feels terrible to try and make a decision. Try when you're not ready, when you can't, when the wave hasn't stopped moving yet for you to find the middle ground. I mean, my mind said terrifying. I don't know what it's like to be a 39, but I imagine some people can have trouble, with that. Here's a very fickle mind, right? If it's open. Remember, we're isolating. We're talking about just the gate, open on the other side. So trying to make a decision, forcing a knowing to happen, the decision that may be so devastating if you're making it out of integrity with your authority, that can lead you to deep Russian depression, make you depressive. Oof. Let's look at the other side. Gate 55, the abundance, which is strictly a question of spirit. We see the melancholy about the emptiness of feeling empty, feeling sad, feeling down, feeling like thy cup does not runneth over, the exact opposite, So when you're dealing with this emptiness inside, this longing or yearning, remember it's a mirror to the 28th gate, mirror in the body graph, and it's a love gate. It is love that is about, yes, fickleness, but also romance or not. He loves me not. It's passion, sadness about the emptiness or longing. I don't know who or what to be passionate about. So it's the search over here in the emotional system for fullness. That's why you get so many eating problems here with the 55. So they're sad, stuff the emotions with food in order to attempt to fill oneself up, to fill up the emptiness, the lack, or the void inside. Now, this is part of, relative to the biological correspondence, remember that the solar plexus is about the lungs. So in the individuality, we're talking about the expression of the breath. The 55, romance, that is about talking. It's not about fucking, although when the sex is bad, probably not going to end well because, the romance might be done. But the talking is the relational dynamic there with that 55. Maybe eating. I think of, whereas over here, archetypally with the 28, I think Romeo and Juliet. Over here, I think about, it's a cartoon, Lady and the Tramp, where they're just looking at each other, eating, talking over food, bonding over food. So you're never going to be able to help these beings who are 55s unless they're living out their design. All individuals, we need to help them be able to know that being or feeling empty, sadness, longing, you're not going to take away that by making light of it. You're not going to take away that by propagandizing it, as in, it's going to be better tomorrow, or ignoring the darkness. Quite interesting. Recently, I became aware of someone who is strongly emotional, the entire stream of moodiness and this melancholy and sadness, and was dating somebody who said, your emotions aren't real. Ignore those. Wait, what? No, the hope to pain and back again, the spike of the up down, it's a true, real thing. There's no wonderfulness only in the emotional system. There is pain too. So all we can do, and our emphasis in helping the being be authentic and real, is there's no spiritual bypassing here. No spiritual bypassing here. Allow the emotions to go through their wave. Allow the energy to flow, to teach emotional clarity, that you've got to wait for the wave to settle, letting them understand that time is the only thing that brings clarity to come to them. It's not your mind trying to force. It's definitely not rationalizing, trying to find meaning. The 55, its most challenging state of being is when it marries stories or reasons behind why it's sad or emotional or depressed or fickle or whatever, empty, whatever it happens to be that the mind thinks it can do to resolve the openness. It's not a mind thing. This is a chemistry. And one of the reasons why we let go of reasons is because if you misidentify with a reason, here you go, says mind, you're justified in your sadness. Here's some more things to be sad about. And this other thing. And what about that? You know, and then you just, in the pit of despair, you find yourself stuck there. You don't want to be there. But it's true that we have to at least experience the down. Doesn't mean we have to stay stuck or give us much more reasons why we should stay down. Yeah. Life is an up and down for an emotional being. So we use melancholy, again, our chemistry, sadness, in any creative endeavor. If you have no energy to get up and dance or sing a song or do poetry or play music or whatever, listen. Just listen. Use music to listen. Listening to rain sounds for me, quite like that, because I'm a cold thirst person. So everybody has their own trip, but the pulse, the energy, the inner knowing, the frequency, remember, sometimes the music can help us unlock the emotions and allow us to feel it, allow the energy to flow. Being in love or passionate about whatever it is that you do is the thing that can help unlock things in you. You know, listening to a song or a story or some poetry, whatever it is that helps you emote. This is energy in motion, motion, energy in motion, emotion. So this is the magic that's possible. That is absolutely essential for a 55, where we're dealing with people who are always on the edge of being emotionally or physically ill if they're stuffing their emotions and they're not allowing the energy to flow. So Ra, according to Sean, is saying, Ra, I remember Ra saying about the 39 that if someone is provoked by you, then you don't have the right spirit. They don't have the right spirit for you. I have my design Mars in 39.6, and I find this to be true. Right. Tease them, provoke the spirit in the other. If you both like the results, well, wonderful. That's a nice dance. And the happenstance of being you and the other. Okay. 22, further up in the stream of emoting, we have the possibility for the openness to listening, to hearing what people want over time. Gate 22 is grace, the gate of openness, a quality of behavior best suited in handling mundane and trivial situations, your left ear. So the melancholy sadness here is fear of silence or sadness, that there's nothing worthwhile to listen to. These people can get very, very depressed. And all of a sudden you see this 22 being more antisocial. Why? Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. You know, can go both ways. So more often they're going to be antisocial than social, because it's deeply discriminatory to the mood, which is carried in the frequency, which is an expression of the chemistry. So relative to its attunement to the moment over time, because it's emotional, it's hearing for, it's listening for, okay, for whatever it is that's right for them to attune to. But if it's not, here, let me read it directly so I don't screw this one up. He says, the moment that it listens to something and whatever is listening doesn't do it for it, they can be very, very cruel, and how they close themselves off to that force that was trying to have contact with them. Okay. He's speaking from the perspective of having a couple of, or at least one, he had 112 there. Okay. So he had most likely experiences with a couple of people, if not many more, particularly romantically. We know individuality, very romantically inclined potentially. So one of those things to recognize about the 22nd gate is that it's a very important thing that they need to hear. They need to hear the right thing in their life with their left ear. So listen to what is attuned to your mood. What's right for you to attune to? The things that you're open to listen to, whether that being very picky with one's music or one's conversation, or what education or who you're listening to that you're taking in, who's worthwhile to listen to. Oh, how sad. There's nobody worth listening to right now. Antisocial, so social or antisocial. Grace, the gate of openness. Stand still, the gate of caution, the expression. So remember, when we talk about throat gates, we are talking about noisy making out in the world of form, truly. And this is the expression of the only channel that is mutated and mutative and manifested. The 12, gate of caution. A quality, the quality of restraint and the importance of meditation and inaction in confronting temptation. What is the temptation? Tell somebody, telling, the 12. I know I can try to tell, to be social, to inform, the whole channel, right? But here we just have the gate. So the melancholy is that there's nobody worth telling anything to. Telling. Whereas on the other side, it was listening. He says one of the coldest, cruelest, meanest, nastiest gates is the 12. Now, he's speaking as somebody who has a 12 with an undefined solar plexus. The melancholy of the 12th gate is that there's no one worth telling anything to. The exact opposite of the 22, nothing worth listening to. Remember, there's a story about him getting all of the materials, and I don't know where it came from. So pardon me, I'm just not remembering whether it was him speaking or somebody telling me that he did this, but that he thought he was crazy, took all of his notes, put it in a guitar and burned it. So that's cold and cruel, to hold back the wisdom of that voice experience from the entire world because they're too stupid to get this, or I might be crazy and meh. Thank God he took his time to test it out and validate it for truth and then extrapolate it out over the next 25 years. Because, yeah, we're worth telling something to. We're listening raw. So this 12th gate is a gate of aloneness. Remember, it's a stop codon in our genetics, 12, 33, 56. Buck stops here. This is at the end of every genetic sentences, one of these three gates. So as a gate of caution, it can be deeply, deeply, deeply discriminatory, okay? Selective. Remember, individuality. Individuality, when we are looking at strong individuals, they're very acoustically sensitive, okay? Here and now or not. I'm in the mood to pay attention to you or not. Stop yelling at me or not, It's a sensitivity that one has to the frequency, the sadness, the moodiness, the chemistry. This one is not worth telling anybody anything. So this being one of the creative channels of individual circuitry. Is that right? I know that this one is creativity as well as leadership. I'm pretty sure that this one is creative of individuality as well. Well, all of it's creative anyway, but it's the only one that's manifested. So in the emotional field, meeting the volatility of the power of the emotions on their up or down, whenever you're looking at the 12th gate, it has enormous potential to impact but only when they really want to, or when it's right for them, when it resonates inside of them, when they're ready to communicate. Because caution, you know, are they going to get to that point where they can inform in order to impact, like Ra? He was an informer. I got him singing in my head. Okay, so getting to the point in following their own nature that they can then do that telling business with others. In other words, they can see the other is worthy of hearing. Ooh, honeymoons. Yeah, we're worthy of hearing. We want to hear what you have to say, as long as we're in the mood and it's right for us too. Okay, we have our inner truth, the gate of mystery. This is the awareness of universal underlying principles. The sadness here is the pressure of the question of why inside. This melancholy over a lack of inspiration, because the head center is about inspiration. So we begin with the 61st gate of inner truth. Some things are unknowable. That's a truth. Some things we just cannot know, not in this context, in this life, you know, riding around on this body vehicle. We have so many things that we cannot know because our perceptual capability cannot know, cannot attune to some sound frequencies, some visual wave formulas, patterns, all those things. So of all of the gates of the head center, these pressure gates, this is the one that can really drive you crazy, drive you mental, or in Ra's words, spawn madness, or what we call madness, because it is part of the loudest internal mental thought process. Okay, looping thought processes. Here we have a very different kind of melancholy process than the madness process. Those are very different, you know. Sometimes people get courageous and creative and other people dismiss it as madness, like you're crazy. Oh, yes. But this in a large business becomes an inspired new idea, like quite literally. Ah, it's inspired. Ooh, this gets us off on a start, relatively speaking, through the other people into a new direction in life. So the madness itself here is about trying to know what's unknowable. Are you crazy? You must be nuts. Why are you trying to figure out why when it's just pie in the sky? It's a mystery. You can't know why. Like Ra, you have to have a reason. There is no reason. Just be. So here, the fundamental pain point or sadness for 61 is a lack of inspiration. In other words, as long as they don't feel inspired, as long as there isn't this sense of wonder about trying to resolve something or know something, if there's no inspiration, this is the source of their sadness, their melancholy. Sadness in the sense that there's no mutative knowing that can be on the horizon. What are they looking for ultimately? Awareness, right? Channel name. Trying to get over the fear of ignorance or being ignorant. I don't want to be ignorant. I want to know these things. Why can't we know everything? If you've ever been one of those people, this is Laveena's experience, you know, in the Matrix, when they got the download plug into their brain and they could just download everything, flying a helicopter, check, you know, all of that stuff. God, I wish. That's a great fantasy. I love that. Okay. 24, the return. Gate of rationalization. This is the natural and spontaneous process of transformation and renewal. The sadness here is that my mind won't shut up. A mind that is never quiet. It's loud in there. Yeah. So the 64th, it's saying, but that's a typo. It's the 61st gate. The 61st gate can lead to madness, and the 24th gate leads to being disturbed, according to Ra. The things about the nature of the 24th gate and its melancholy is that it's a very specific melancholy, the melancholy that is never quiet. And there is this enormous sadness, particularly and ultimately mental depression, because we're talking about the mental reality game up here versus the physicality that we looked at down there. So the deep melancholy comes with a lack of silence. Okay, lack of silence. The mind that is loud, looping, won't shut up like a dog worrying over a bone. It's going over the same dang process over and over again. Where I would say, busy, busy. So if you are amplifying the question of why on the other side because you don't have access to it, as in it's open in you, that vulnerability can be a pain point because you're constantly enthralled by, but not in a good way, stressed by, pressured by the why inside, the amplification and distortion. So this is the thing that leads you to being up all night. It does not stop. It's loud. It wants a resolution, says the 24, right? Because we want to capture that pressure and transform it into a concept, a worthy concept. But that mind is never quiet. And will it ever shut up? And will it ever stop? Nope. Keeps returning, looping. Where's the awareness? It's looking, maybe not finding. Pulse, it's there. Ooh, conversation or communion or transit or whatever. But then that would be a conditioned experience. Whether it be movement towards purpose, Saturn, Chiron, Uranus, Saturn, Uranus, Chiron, part of the purpose, or not. Transit being solar transits or transits of the day. Okay, we have breakthrough, gate of insight, the inner third ear, I would call it, the 43. This is one of those deaf gates. So insight, in order for achievement to be maintained, a new order must be fairly established. This is melancholy over trying to find an efficient way. Because what is the 4323? Structuring unique, individual, different, potentially genius insights into the world of form. Remember where language happens at the metamorphic gates, the 23, being able to break down complex insights into small digestible pieces. If this is a being who doesn't have consistent access to the 23 on the other side, I'm sad because I can't structure this efficiently. What is it here for? The 3420, archetypally, manifesting generator, what is it here for? It's speaking to the nature of a design where thoughts must become deeds. Here's the thoughts. There they are. Okay, that's the dynamic, the relational dynamic between the two. So remember the whole nature about what it is to be a difficult individual. It's not that we're deliberately trying to be deaf or stubborn. It's just that we have a layer of protection. I'm saying we, because all individuality is like this, but particularly and especially these deaf gates, DEAF, 38, 39, 43, whether you have it natally or in part of the movement towards purpose. Remember cycles too, bring things alive in you, either through transits, through people, whatever it is developmentally that you're learning. So don't forget, it's difficult. Finding an efficient way is difficult. All individuality has its inherent challenge. So for the 43rd gate, the only thing that's important is that you find out, can we make it easier? How do we make it easier? For insights to make things easier, more efficient, more effective, when it can't be easy? Oh, 43s get sad. Why can't it be easier? Why does it have to be so difficult to explain what I know? You hear that? The 23, the complaint of the mind running the show on the other side. The moment that they're confronted with complex things or challenges, and they're having things that they cannot penetrate into the core of knowing in order to explain, whether it's just simply not easy to do it, or whether they're having difficulty working through it because they can't find the most efficient way possible, they get sad. Nothing like wasting time and energy for someone, especially like me, who has an undefined sacral, non-energy type, right? Energy projector, non-energy type. Oh, it's sad. We don't like the waste of words. So because it's individual, it doesn't mean it's there just because you wanted it, as in the knowing. Yeah. Knowing happens when it happens. Efficiency structuring, whatever the case may be. When you've just got a hanging 43, it happens when it happens. You can't force it, just like you can't force creativity. You know, when you try to push somebody to sing when they're not in the mood, that's not going to work. That's not going to happen, you know? So don't push the river. Wait for right timing. Individuality is like that. Think of it like first line business. Like, how can we explain when we don't know, you know? 23, splitting apart, the gate of assimilation. Amorality. Amorality, as in the awareness and understanding which leads to the acceptance of diversity. The acceptance of diversity, freaky insights that can be genius or not. So the 23 has this skilled articulation. Again, remember, anything in the throat, the I know principle, as in I know or not. This is insistent that it knows, or desistent, I don't know. And so the sadness here is about not being able to efficiently explain one's knowing. We are spokespersons for individual processes of knowing or not, sadness or not, relative to what we know to be true, because it's knowing. So we may not be able to. We may blurt, I don't know, but more likely we blurt that we think we know, I know, and then you cannot explain yourself. Why? Because you don't have the concretization of the insight connected up, and maybe it's falling flat, not right timing. That's why this gate has the name of blurting as an alternate keynote. So the essential ingredient as far as how we are transformed on the mental plane right here, or empowered or mutated, the 23. So this is about explaining something efficiently. And ultimately, it's about explaining what you know efficiently. So melancholy is something that rises out of not being able to explain one's knowing. Why Laveena doesn't smoke pot, because it's so horrible to the mind, cannot explain what one knows, and gets stuck. I get stuck up here. It doesn't feel good. So beginning to experience the nature of you that arises from inside as an awareness principle about what's happening now. This is now or not. Oh, that's happening. Oh, it's that thing. You know, wow, how nice. Okay, so just watch it right now instead of making yourself wrong about what's on the other side of the channel. That's my biggest aim and desire and goal for you, is to recognize what is quote unquote true, relative truth in the moment, this experience of you now. We are not stagnant, stuck creatures. We do grow. So, you know, when you're aware, you tend to have a different perspective on what's happening. And that's quite nice to see. Okay. So because we are unusual, wacky, weird, who's out here very unusual, wacky, weird? Anybody with individuality, particularly if you have a lot more. Lots of channels, lots of hanging gates. We are weird, what to do. It is what it is. So the sadness is not only about individuality, us being weird or different, standing out, unless you're flamboyant like that and you quite like the attention, standing out when one doesn't want to stand out, as in, I don't want to attract that attention, not that attention, you know, that kind of attention, as in outside of the mainstream. Some people stand with that and go, hell yeah, I'm outside the mainstream. And other people go, no, no, I just kind of want to fit in right now. You know, I don't really want to be seen like that. So when are we more likely to be seen? When we're making noise. Often when people are trying to explain things, us individuals trying to explain, it isn't necessarily of value in terms of mutation for the other. What if they're not in the mood to hear? You're emotional, you're having a rough day, most likely you're going to tune out half of what I say, if you can be even present at all in class, yes? So timing is everything when it comes to you paying attention to not only yourself in interaction with others, but what you hear yourself say. Remember, any of the activations that are in the throat center particularly, those are aspects of you, and especially true for you to hear what you say, voices that you need to hear of your own. It may not be your authoritative process. The throat isn't the authority in a majority of people, because authority is another place, a process in the body graph or with life. But listen for your voices. It's very difficult for individuals, this kind, to get beyond that melancholy or depression of not being able to mutate other people with their knowing. It's an art. All individuality is an art. All expression arts are arts for their own sake, a creative process. My art is teaching relative to translating knowing and the explanation that becomes efficient for the other person to take in, test, validate, and experiment with it practically to see if it's right for you to attune to. Use the word attune for any individuality. It's quite nice to have as a resonance principle. Now, this is just a very important consideration that I won't go into much depth or detail, but you see, here is what I was attempting to explain to you earlier. It's just so much nicer when you got a visual on the screen, isn't it? There's charisma and there's efficiency or structuring. Sorry, efficiency is the word we use at BG5. So structuring relative to being an individual. Individuals, archetypally speaking, this is the individual, design of genius or freak. Okay, they are a mental projected channel. If that's the only channel they have, we have a mental projector on our hands, aurically, chemically, and then they are the ones who are designed to be the guidance system to this person's rocket ship. Rocket ship. Just this morning, I was looking at a thing on X about Tesla launching one of their rockets. So right there, Elon Musk has the 3420, in case you didn't know. His girlfriend, whatever her name is, mother of his children, I'm pretty sure she has one aspect maybe, or maybe not. No, she's got a totally open throat, completely open throat. My apologies. Anyway, nothing depresses a 4323 more than waste of energy, which is, according to a mental projector, words. You know, they're trying to structuring unique insights and nobody's paying attention. That makes you sad. Okay. 60. Ooh, I know it's a big bugaboo for a lot of you, whether you have the 60 or there's just the 3, whether you have the 60 or the 3 on the other side right now with Pluto in this gate. I know it can be very challenging for a lot of people. Gate 60 is limitation. It's the gate of acceptance. Acceptance of limitation is the first step in transcendence. This melancholy is about having nowhere to go. Where are we going? Nowhere. Why? Because we're stuck. We're in limitation. We have to accept we're in limitation. Everything is limited. When you're looking at a body graph, you're looking at the channels where you are limited. Channels, being the definition, is a limitation, a correct limitation. How you're here to be you, uniquely and true to you. Okay, so just our basic work in design, depression is part of the formatting process. We know that this is a format gate. You got one or the other side. This is part of the format to be in the pulse of off-on frequency, energy, which operates in a pulse. So it's about now or not. The 60th gate, which is limitation, being melancholy, about having nowhere to go, we're looking at a movement that's taking us towards the Sphinx, right? The Sphinx. It's taking us toward the gate of the magnetic monopole, the direction of the self, out into the expression of the self. So where does it want to go? Higher self. It wants to rise. It wants to mutate. It is part of the channel of mutation after all. So ultimately, mutation leads us to a higher, more empowering direction. And one of the things about the 60th gate is that it doesn't look like there's anywhere to go. It doesn't look like humanity is going to get better. It doesn't look like mutation is actually going to happen. It doesn't look like there's anything but being restricted and stuck within your limitation. I'm frustrated and I'm stuck, maybe, potentially, right? The primary not self tendency. Remember the generality, you are a specificity. The primary not self tendency is going to be attached to your auric frequency field, because those are your channels or lack thereof expressing the nature of being off track for you. Here, we're looking at a gate that is pointed at the sacral. So, of course, feeling stuck or frustrated because one is stuck is going to be one of those things that one might deal with. And particularly because everybody's dealing with Pluto in the 60 right now. Everybody's being mutated. Everybody's getting depressed. Need for deep rest. Why? Because mutation takes energy, guys. It takes energy. Have you noticed? Yeah. Those solar flares, how tired you might be on those days when we get a lot more energy from the sun for this mutation. Remember, the deep potential for deep rest, depression, is that 60th gate where the limitations have to be dealt with, which is so often we have to look at as an analyst to work within the construct of not only our limitation as a human creature attempting to do our best for the client, but also their limitation. In other words, meet them where they're at. If we are happy, happy, joy, joy, and someone's sad, obviously, we're not going to try and drag them up to the happy, happy when their dog just died. We're going to let them sit with that, right? So meet them where they're at. When we're looking at dealing with the limitations around all of us, everybody's limited. Why? Because physical. Yeah, we're in the physical. Can't fly. There's a limitation for you. So melancholy here is about it never ends. Your deconditioning process, it never ends as far as we want to get somewhere, we want to go somewhere, we want to do something, and yet, oh, we're stuck. We're in the limitation. So we can't get past that limitation. Why? There's no 3 on the other side. Even if you had the 3, it's difficulty at the beginning. Everything's difficult at the beginning. Learning to blow your nose and brush your teeth, it's difficult at the beginning. I mean, even the simplest thing, tie your shoe. Oh, but isn't it nice to rise to the occasion? Yeah, and learn how to do such things. Ordering is a process, not a problem. Okay? As an analyst, focus on, if they have the 60th gate, accept the limitations in your life and recognize that acceptance is taking place in a pulse. That acceptance of limitation happens in an on-off pulse. So just because you inform someone, hey, accept your limitations, or tell someone or ask someone, can you accept this limitation? Doesn't mean they're going to get it right there in that moment. Like the space between the notes. If we didn't have breath in and out in order to put pauses between the words, we wouldn't be able to understand each other. Music would be like, you know, and done, over and done. All the notes and all the sounds at once. Boom, done, over, see ya, bye. We're dead and gone. No, this is where we leave, by the way. Damn it, Laveena is just completely going off on a tangent. Oh well, what to do? Pulsing process off and on, there and gone. When the inspiration hits, it's like lightning, you know? Here we are. So at any moment, at any time, in any place, in any space, you will not know until you know. You know? Mutation. It happens in a pulse. You transcend that mutation in a pulse, and it's not something that you can expect or force or push or try to do. It just happens when it happens. So that's the only promise, according to Ra, his words to you, you can promise that you can offer. The 60th gate is that, hey, it may happen to you, that you transcend that limitation. It may happen. What is it about? Relative to that being, look at their process, whatever it is specifically that they have there to be. And then we see across the way the difficulty at the beginning. The difficulty at the beginning is about ordering. This is the gate of ordering. The fundamental challenge of initiation is to transcend confusion and establish order. So melancholy is about seeking advice and not getting it. Oh, not getting it. I'm sad. If we think about the 3.5, it's called victimization. Victimization. 5s can be incredibly victimized. And especially if they're asking for advice, and they're sad because they're not getting it, ooh, even more sinking into the sadness or the melancholy. In the sense of the 60th gate has nowhere to go, the 3 often screams very loudly, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here because I don't know what's happening. Because it's new. Remember that the gate 3 is about ordering. This is the pulse that is at work. We can't force the pulse to happen. One of the greatest difficulties that arises in a gate 3's life is that the core of its melancholy is seeking advice and not getting the right advice. And so they're tuning into others to find that resolution. Where is the advice? Where can it come from? How can your pressure help me bring about order? They don't have the 60, so they don't have the continuity or the relational dynamic to themselves. So they might try to find it with an other in order to have the real relationship with the pressure and the drive to overcome the limitation by bringing about order. That's the dynamic between the two. So there's no one that can explain where they are because they are where they are, wherever they are. And in not knowing about the advice that they can get from the other, because if they knew, they wouldn't ask for it. Isn't it true? So sadness. I need to put a mental pause in that and come back to it, because my recognition, finally, I was wondering when this would come to fruition. My Chiron, both conscious and unconscious, are here in the 3.3 and the 3.2. So someday, maybe I'll have, hopefully soon, a different view and a recognition I can share with you about how this feels in my Chiron wounding. The thing that really hit me this time was, oh, advice. Advice. Okay, it's about advice. My wound is about advice. Quite interesting. As a projector who's here to give advice when recognized and invited, and I'm clear. Okay. Here, let's go to the 14. Possession in great measure, the gate of power skills. This is the accumulation and retention of power through skilled interaction, coupling grace with control. This is the melancholy over having to work. Oh, or not. I can tell you, for me, it was an or not. Every single time I have a break or had a break, now I don't schedule myself in the same way, because it drove me nuts not being able to do this teaching work, which is, what I do for a living, what my whole social life revolves around. It may not seem very social to you, but what to do? I'm not a 4. This is my experience with life, as in how I commune with others, teaching or, doing the readings here and there. So the melancholy over having to work or not is my experience of it, of course. The 14th gate is that if you're going to be here in the world, you have to work. And interesting, hey, Rob would say, not here to work for the projector. He would say a lot of shocking things that are attempting to get your attention, but not to take him literally, as in, yes, don't super slave away. This can be a slavish gate. However, if you're doing creative work that you enjoy, and it's something that feels the light of your purpose shining through you, it's part of my incarnation cross, part of my spiritual work, is to be able to use these power skills or advise with this powerful potential. And the individual is always at best when they have a passion for things. So anybody who's individual, your passion project, your passion purpose, the thing that lights you up inside, the way that I feel it anyway, because the higher self lit up, like feeling like I'm literally glowing at times. I'm just glowing. This is amazing. God, the energy is there or not, though, with this kind of being when it's just a hanging gate. Maybe not the right direction. Or where do we put all the money that we've earned through our work? The possession in great measure. It's not just about what you do for work, but the resources that are attracted to you based upon who you're connected to. The 14 has everything in this body graph funneling into it. In other words, it has no power base in a large group. It is its own power base, everything feeding into it at some place or space. That's why it's so important relative to its individual aspect, or its small group aspect, or its large group aspect. The material way for you as an individual is if you love what you do, if you're passionate, then you will not be melancholic nor depressed. So long as you have something to do with your time, your energy, your attention, your money, whatever it happens to be. So there's that inspiration. I quite like that. I love it, actually. And then the 2 on the other side, the receptive, the gate of direction of the self. So different, these 2 meeting in a channel, as in, yes, they're harmonic to each other, and they're not polar opposites in the wheel, but boy, are they connected, as in the 2, not one, but the 2 will be about the direction of the self. And so it has this receptivity as the primal base through which any response is determined. It's the receptive part, the beginning of the quarter of civilization, purpose fulfilled through form, right? So getting us off on a whole new direction. Creativity on the other side creates the yang principle. 2 creates the yin principle, meaning the form principle. The root of action is the form. So what happens with the 2 and no 14? It's like you've got a, what are those called? Steering wheel and no gas pedal. That's what you've got with a 2. No gas pedal, because the 14 is the gas pedal. Melancholy over nothing moving fast enough, that the direction of life is death. And so before we come to that place, that doorway in space where we just, one ending, one door closes, another one opens. Death is the final transformation. It's the greatest transformation for a physical being anyway. So when the second gate realizes, recognizes, responds to the fact that the direction of life is death, it's because truly, authentically, remember authenticity, good word for the individual who is aligned to the higher self. Higher self, this gate 2 is holding me to me and you to you. It's creating the illusion of separation from the totality of existence. It's creating this form principle that we're riding around on. And so the Ajna, with its design crystal, okay, dropping down to meet gate 2, because the gate 2 let go of holding the personality or the mind to the vehicle and the driver, marrying, coming back together, and then going back out through that death is just a doorway, 60, out of the limitation of the form, back into the void of existence, the unity. We're looking at the 2 fundamentally at its core. The receptive is that it finally, truly, the magnetic monopole itself wants to get to the point of death. Why? You ever felt like you didn't belong here? I know all individuals will feel this, but you ever felt like this wasn't your planet, or you were on the wrong path, or this isn't the right purpose, and you felt this longing for home? Whether you're defined in the G center unconsciously, like me, or undefined, you might find this especially true, that you feel this longing in you, this sadness. I want to go home. I want to go home. I don't belong here. I, personality, consciousness, thinking I. Or is it the underlying nature of the principle of the fact that, Ra would joke, you want love? Die. You get it immediately. It is love that builds the body, because the Ajna crystal, the design crystal, and the unity of the magnetic monopole, the 2 separating in order to build the body, die. And now we have the unconditional love marrying, going back out. And oh, my mind said incinerating, as in recycling at the core of the center of the earth. That's where the design crystal goes. We just get one body in this body's life. We just get this form. So it wants to get to the point of death so that it, if we were anthropomorphizing the magnetic monopole, it can reunite with its design crystal and rediscover that love, that pure acceptance of being. So the second gate clearly recognizes that we are terminal, as in, now I used to think it was because I have the 32 and no 54, but now I'm sensing, the wisdom of the magnetic monopole, as in the second gate wants everything to speed up, as in wants things to happen quickly. And yet the sadness here for it too is it's not happening fast enough. Not happening fast enough for you. Why? Because you want to go. But what about me, this personality riding around on this vehicle? So the source of melancholy and depression, get it done fast, get it over with fast. So you got a undefined route, exacerbating the problem of trying to hurry, yeah, with the two active there. It can be easily become melancholic when it feels like everything is slowing down and nothing's moving fast enough. How many people with the Pluto, they're creating that stagnation and stuckness, feeling like, oh my God, when is this day, this life going to be over? And there's the melancholy or sadness. So now I'm going to be a little creative with you, because my intention with this was to attempt to try to source inside to inspire the muse inside of you. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a recognition that I'd like you to play with. Besides that exercise, if you don't have anything sad in your life, you're not emotional, I don't know what you're talking about, Laveena, I never get sad. Okay. What about this? What if you could come up with a way to facilitate the muse in the other, as in give them something. My mind is now singing, let's give them something to talk about. How about love? Yeah, the direction of the higher self. Love is a direction. Love is a place. Love is a space. And identity is an expression of love, right? There is no separation here. So the creative, the gate of self-expression, is creation as a primal force, the energy potential to manifest inspiration without limitation. And so the saddest thing for one is the sadness of not being recognized as being different. And so the whole thing about this is not being able to be seen as somebody who stands out or is different from the rest. Not that we're above the rest, but just that we're different. We are different. Everyone is different. But given the not self and its complications, many people who have the first gate don't want to be recognized as being different. So let's take it to the extreme state of a reflector as an example. As a child, a reflector with a 1, not wanting to stand out. I want to be just like everybody else. Oh, everybody wants to dress as Dora's this year, so I'm going to go dress as Dora, please, mommy, daddy, so that, hope that other people think I'm just like you, wanting to fit in instead of seeing that you're born to stand out. Because Ra says that makes you sick, because the not self is so totally distant from what is unique and true inside of you. So what are you really here to be? Different, uniquely, authentically you. No one's youer than you. That's true. Thanks, Dr. Seuss. It is the differences of these examples. Hey, they're designed to be an example that ultimately shows us the way. Part of the incarnation cross of the Sphinx. Show us the way by being different. Remember, when you have a defined higher self, the G center, you're looking at people who are here to comfort and console us about the direction that life is taking us. It is a fact of life. So being different, allow yourself to be able to stand tall and unique and be seen. And especially too, when you've got this 8 in you, holding together the gate of contribution. Now, it's the basic worth realized in contributing individual efforts towards group goals. And when you look at this 8, nothing makes an 8 sadder than no one paying attention. No one paying attention. Why? Because the 8 is designed to attract attention. Maybe not necessarily to itself. If it's just a hanging 8, it's the archetype of somebody who is the person in the gallery, the salesperson, the talent handler, or whatever, attracting attention to either the company or the artist that is so creative. So if you are sad with this inability to contribute a mutative example into the world, either yourself or the other, but particularly when we're talking about the not self here, can't attract attention, then we get sad. So the individual operating as a role model is designed to be unique and stand out. And operating on their own, you may not call others, because remember, when we're talking about frequency here, this is logic. It says, I lead because I've got the best plan and it's logical. This is safe as we move into the future. If it's abstract, we're looking at the past and I remember this is what happened and here's the secret. And because this happened in this experience, we've got to go this way. But the 8, it doesn't try to argue. It doesn't try to say. It just walks and goes and stands out and moves. Now, it may not do by itself because it may not be attracted or connected to energy. Depends on the context of the rest of the design. The real melancholy of the role model is nobody's watching, nobody's paying attention. This is when they get really sad because we can't just stand up there and say, hey, you pay attention to me. I'm gonna go shout from the rooftops. Human design is the best thing since sliced bread, you guys. Check it out. That's not going anywhere, especially as a non-energy type, right? Hey, you pay attention to me. The world is ending with your sign or whatever, you know, it's just not going to work. So we can't do that as an 8, yeah, relatively speaking. It's living out your role that attracts the right attention. Just be yourself. I love that phrase, very simple, trite but true. Be yourself to love yourself. If you're not yourself, you can't love it because it's not self. So it's not authentic. It's not real and true, not honest or in integrity or authentic to you, you know? So when you are yourself, you're going to attract the right attention. And remember, if you carry any mutative energy, you're going to be fulfilled in the mutation of others. One of the most wonderful gifts that I have as an 8-2 Jupiter and an 8-5 teacher, the earth principle of my design, my life's work, contagion, is being able to teach you or infect you with the knowledge, because that's where my purpose fulfilled is, with my mind's process, in order that you mutate too. And I love nothing more than hearing your process of mutation shining through. Such a beautiful gift to be able to do this work with you. Fulfilled in the mutation of others, all individuality. Fulfilled in the knowing passed on to the next generation. So if nobody's paying attention, that means nobody's mutated. Here's the crux of it. If nobody's being mutated, then the question is the mutative direction viable? So attracting attention is an essential ingredient, because if you're mutated and you're not catching anybody's attention, that means this mutation of yours isn't going to survive. In other words, it's simply not valuable to the collective whole. So the gate 8, just like the 12, these 2 have the ability to attract attention, particularly of the collective. The reason why down here is because small groups, okay? The reason why over here is because, yes, it's part of large groups, because all gates are part of large group, but particularly it's manifested as a creative outlet of the individual circuitry. So it has this impact, you see. I got really sad recently. I'll share a little story. I looked at my recent Vimeo stats for 245 videos that I had the system analyze. And it said something like 20% of the videos were watched. And then I went and looked in the course areas, and I could see that not everybody was checking off. Now, whether you do it or not, I don't know. Maybe you watch it and you don't check it off because you want to come back to it. I would do things like that personally. No, I got to listen to this again. No, I got to come back to this. I don't want to check it off because I'm not done with it yet, you know, that kind of thing. But then looking at the statistics and seeing, you know, this sadness about nobody paying attention to what is part of the work. The mind can get all caught up in awe, and that was fleeting, you know, just for a moment. But I know, relative to taking the bulk of this information in, it takes freaking time. It takes time. And so long as I know that you're going through your process, whatever it happens to be for you, there is no time constraint on you, from me to you, on this particular program, right? It is, The information is there. You get continual updates. You can come live when it's right for you. And sometimes it's so much easier to pay attention when you know there's a live person on the other side and not just a video that you can pause and go on and do something else, you see. So I comprehend. I'm not sad about no one paying attention, because notice the keynotes we have been talking about the extreme, particularly reasons why one might be sad, and to let go of the reasons. No one, not one person is paying attention. What about you? What about your process too? You know, yes, I'm a collaborative, so I enjoy the communion or communication with each of you. I see your name and I know your frequency because I've heard you, you know. It doesn't have to be, I'm a impersonal sharer, you know, as in sharing for sharing's sake, collective, abstract, experiential. It is what it is. But two, as long as I get these little touches from you, it could be just a word or two here or there in class or in writing. I know that you're there because I can hear that you're aware over time as you decondition and align, not by the words that you're saying, but by the frequency with which you show up, the less drag, like quite literally, the less resistance in the body when you're communing with me. So I thank you for your time and attention, for the process of valuing this beautiful, magnificent system